When did it start?
And 98 is when we started production.
How tough was it for you to get into this?
It came with a set of its own rules.
How did Dodla progress?
We were the only ones who started with a bigger plant comparatively day one.
Is Dodla in all this game plan?
In those days, it was a 75,000 litre per day plant.
Was all this a part of your game plan, or was it just simply procuring?
Till the 94, 95, milk was restricted to the cooperatives.
You know, when you are a private sector company, usually the pricing is an issue.
So broadly speaking, that's a fundamental difference that we have.
Where is the most of the profit coming from?
One is the financial part of it, one is the operational part of it.
Is it from selling plain milk, or is it from the value added?
Because that is basically saying that I am making ghee, but what happened to the rest of them?
But when you look at India as a market today, from where we progressed when we started that entire cooperative revolution,
The convenience, the habits are changing, people are getting affordability. And I think as it grows, it will do better because A, it's a healthier alternative.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to yet another edition of Conversations with Suresh Kochatal on HYBIZTV. Milk is a product that was in short supply long ago. Possibly today's young generation would not even be aware of it. But there was a generation when we used to buy powder from the US to overcome the shortage, till somebody called Dr. Varghese Kurian came along and created Operation Flood. That changed the course of history. A cooperative movement today that has snowballed into many private enterprises too, who are now dominating the landscape. Amul is still the big boy in the game, but there are other players in it. And one of them is the Dodla Group. And today I have with me Mr. Sunil Reddy, the Managing Director of Dodla Group, with us to speak about milk, his industry, and of course, how he started it all. Sir, welcome to the show. Namaskar.
Namaskar, sir. Thank you very much to HYBIZTV for giving me this opportunity, and thank you, Suresh Garu.
So Dodla Dairy Limited, we will get into that in a bit time, but where are you originally from?
I hail from a village called Mahmadapuram, which is around 20 kilometers from Nellore. Now it's a city, it was a town then.
Yeah.
So Nellore is what I would call like we hailed from. Then moved to Chennai, and then from there.
Geographically, it is closer.
Closer.
What about your family, sir? Where are they from?
So both my parents are from Nellore. My mother and father are again two villages apart from each other. My wife is also from Nellore, but she was born and brought up in the US, and then she got married and came back to India. So, and two daughters, both married. One is in Bangalore, one is in Hyderabad. And we still maintain strong roots with Nellore in terms of our house still exists, the agriculture still exists, and we continue to do that.
So basically, was it an agriculture family?
Yes, my grandfather was the one who came out of the village. So till then it was an agriculture family. My grandfather was the one who moved out from the village to the town of Nellore.
Okay. So wonderful. So agriculture and dairy as a broad terminology includes agriculture. Part of it is the dairy industry also. But more importantly, what was your education like, sir?
So basically, I'm an engineering graduate. I did my engineering in MIT. It's Manipal Institute of Technology, but studied in Chennai all my life in a school called Don Bosco from kindergarten till 12th, and then from there to Manipal, and passed out of Manipal and started doing the dairy operation.
When did it start? I mean, you directly out of college, were you into this business?
After college, did try to do a few things, didn't work out, and did industrial fabrics, grew mushrooms for a while to sell them, sent mangoes to Singapore way back in 94, 95, and then landed up with the dairy, and now started in 96 as incorporation and to do the company. And 98 is when we started production, and been doing that from since.
Where did you start, sir?
98 April was the day we call it as commercial production. But 96 was the inception of it, rather.
But where was the location? Where did you
Nellore. We
first
started from Nellore as the first plant. So that being the dairy, basically we thought it was those days it was not the problem of selling. Like you were introducing by saying when Mr. Kurian came and there was no milk and milk powder. Even till the late 1990s, you still had to stand in queue to buy milk. You had to go buy a car to get milk. So it was more a challenge to procure milk rather than sell milk.
Today's generation would not even be aware when they look at value-added products in milk, and today you have everything under the sun. But starting from Nellore, usually dairy is a cooperative movement because you need to source the milk. And sourcing milk from the farmers is another tough task. Why should they come to you and not go elsewhere? Possibly those were the days when even the state undertakings, for example, Vijaya would have been or have been in Tamil Nadu or Nandini in Karnataka, these were all big behemoths. And of course, there was a big daddy of it all sitting on the other end of it. But as a player, as a private sector player, how tough was it for you to get into this?
So basically, I think till the 94, 95, milk was restricted to the cooperatives. It was not allowed for private sector. During the delicensing era is when milk was also delicensed. It came with a set of its own rules that there was an order called Milk and Milk Products Order, which said that you cannot procure milk in certain areas, you can procure milk in certain areas. There was a quantity restriction on you cannot do more than 10,000 liters. I guess being younger and not having enough of knowledge, you jump into things without looking too much at the legislation. So didn't think we'll grow, but started in an area where milk was available and we started growing. A. B. Luckily the day one with the team who joined us, who's also with me still, there's our CEO called BVK Reddy. There were a group of them who came in to put in all the hard work. And to see the biggest thing of why we named the company Dodla and why we started doing was also the good work done by my grandparents and parents in the town of Nellore and around, where they had built the first women's college, they had done the first government hospital and it was donated. Local, they had built a couple of schools. So I was the one who I say that rather use the brand to use it for the backward integration of the good work they had done. And my dad also had put up a couple of units in the earlier days of a paper mill and a straw board unit, which used to procure paddy straw from the villages.
Okay.
So we leveraged on that by saying that, hey, maybe we'll get milk too because people know that we exist and we will start. That is why I picked the location of Nellore also, trying to say that it's a place where we come from. Hopefully we will be able to get milk. And
so the family name helped, the backward integration helped.
Family and the team, both.
Yeah, team. So when you, from a town like Nellore, to move into the bigger game, play, say for example Hyderabad, or even maybe geographically closer in Chennai, I don't know whether you went there too. How was that growth from say 1990, the late 1990s to where you are today? How did Dodla progress?
So it's like what we call it as a step-by-step progress. If you take it two ways, one is the financial part of it, one is the operational part of it. Financial part of it and the operational part of it, if you do a comparative of what our local competition were, I think we were the only ones who started with a bigger plant comparatively day one. And it was a state-of-the-art plant. Had given it a turnkey to Tetra Pak as a company those days to start. This came more with the wisdom of what my dad was. My dad had earlier done a couple of industries, like I said, and then he came to the conclusion when I wanted to start, he saying, don't do anything which is subscale, don't do anything saying cheap. Try to do the best of what is there, especially in the earlier stages of when you're doing it. So that was when I first started. Those days it was a 75,000 litre per day plant, a good plant. Like I said, then the team of BVK and the people who had come were able to take it better. So we procured in Nellore, processed in Nellore, sold in Chennai as the way we started. And then every year we were continuing to grow with either an acquisition or whatever. It was a steady state of growth. It's not that we did a 45 degrees or a 90 degree growth. But year on year, whatever money we made, redeployed, built, redeployed and built. So now, looking at coming closer to the 30th years of operation, I think it was steadfastly put your head down and do what you're doing regularly. Now, just taken us to the 4 southern states, or 5 if I include Goa a bit, into terms of what we sell and what we buy and procure. And Maharashtra is also where we started, and we now sell products pan-India. We are also in Africa. We have 2 units, one in Uganda and Kenya. Looking at growing the same old way, just keep doing what you're doing.
So when you look at milk as a product, and we spoke at the start about procuring milk, because that's one of the biggest challenges. You have the big daddies in terms of the cooperatives. Then you have procuring the system, because Dr. Kurian actually did the entire thing on a piecemeal basis. Started with Amul, then he even produced a movie with donation from the farmers. All that was done, but when you are a private sector company, usually the pricing is an issue, because then if somebody pays more, the farmers go there. Then there's a question of quality. Then there's a question of sensitizing them into the feed part of it. Was all this a part of your game plan, or was it just simply procuring?
No, basically we have to be on par with everybody or rather better. So I think the misnomer is when we say dairy, people think of us as farm. So most of the times when my friends come and say, and I go introduce myself, we do run a dairy, they will come and tell us how many animals do you have. So I normally laugh and say, oh, few lakh animals, and then they say, what? And then that's what we say, we collect from the villages. So the misnomer I mean is most of us, not only me, but Amul or all of us, are broadly speaking a tech company. The amount of logistics that are involved, the amount of tech that is involved in terms of procuring milk from a village level to a farmer level. So broadly, the cooperatives have only one investor whom they take care of, and that is the farmer. Because for them, whatever money is earned is given back to the farmer, they operate from the farmer. the margins they get are also distributed back to the farmer. For the private sector, we have two. We have the financial investor and the farmer. So broadly speaking, that's a fundamental difference that we have. So at the village level, when there's a society created, milk is produced, society, there is a guy there and it's distributed among the farmers as whatever it is. Whereas when it's a private sector, the guy running the society is a for-profit center. So over a period, we've evolved, that we've come to the level of now, I think, thanks to technology and the country improving, banking, for example. Earlier, physical cash used to be carried. To today, entire farmers being online, KYC, transfer the money into their bank accounts, village level internet availability, power availability, and you're able to do testing online, paying to the farmers. So now I don't think there's much of a difference between what the cooperatives do or the private sector will do. Earlier, the cooperatives had the advantage of also government support, where they would do a lot of things in terms of developing it by using government money also. Now there is no government money for us. Even now, a few cooperatives get a huge subsidy from the government, like Karnataka, Nandini gets it. We have to fight the battle. I think we survived in this battle because today we have the opportunity of the consumers willing to pay a slight premium, what we call the mass premium. It might not be extraordinarily large, but even that couple of rupees higher in terms of service, quality, and other parameters, which we're able to pass back to the farmers, and we keep the battle going on both the fronts. I think efficiency and keeping us on the toes is what it is.
Yeah, actually building that entire cold chain from procurement to the, the plant and then bottling it, and again, going back to the distribution, it's a huge logistical challenge. But more importantly, when you talk about technology in this entire game plan, in terms of ensuring that the quality happens, then you spoke about pricing as a factor. There is the bottom end is a skim milk, if you can call it that way, and then you come to the whole milk and then the entire stuff. And then, of course, the value-added products, from cheese to paneer to butter to everything. Is Dodla in all this game plan?
We are present in most, I wouldn't use the word cheese, but I rather call paneer a cheese also. But saying that we have ice creams and most of the other products we also do. I think it is also to do with the country's growth, like I keep saying, right? If our GDP continues to develop and people, for example, curd was non-existent 10, 15 years ago, people used to make curd at home, to people buying curd now. It has become more of the convenience factor that's required. And I am not talking of the rich buying curd. It's actually in the bottom of the pyramid has improved. Husband and wife are working more in the bottom of the pyramid, and they rather buy a packet of curd to have a quick thing. So when I started, I still remember that if you are selling milk, a lot of the lower end of the family, the milk used to come from the local tea shop. To today, moving to they can buy long life milk, which is a smaller packet, saying I can just use it for my tea. So there's a lot that has been happening as the country is developing. Per capita consumption is also shooting up in terms of people wanting better food, better protein and all that. So our job is now going to be more and more complicated, that people's expectations are going to be higher and higher in quality.
In fact, when I was speaking to one of my friends who runs a kind of an organic store called Pickle Jar in Sainikpuri, I asked him why does he price his ghee at something close to 2,000 rupees a kilo. He said it costs 31 liters of milk to make 1 liter of ghee. So 1 kilo, whatever you can call it, equivalent of that. And I said, then how come there's some people selling it for 500 rupees? He said, then you devise your own theory why it happens. So my question was also in terms of value addition. And you rightly said curd, for example. Today's young generation, they are more into value-added products. But where is the most of the profit coming from? Or at least where is the bottom line coming from? Is it from selling plain milk, or is it from the value-added?
So basically the bottom line, when you look at it, the dairy industry plays on a wafer-thin margin. Maybe 3%, 4% is what we look at, but we play the game of volumes, and that's the reason why we get the returns that we get. And it's a patient game. I cannot get volumes overnight and I have to build it. To your earlier question of the 31 liters of milk coming ghee, that is a misnomer, because that is basically saying that I am making ghee, but what happened to the rest of the milk?
Milk, that goes as skim milk.
But that goes as buttermilk or curd or whatever. So
yeah.
that is what we call in terms of the efficiency that we operate on. So if you take our things in terms of operation, we have only a 0.03% of losses. So it is that effective in terms of what the system has been evolved in terms of collection, processing, distribution, and all that, including the packaging. We are, in fact, if we take a country like India, globally, I think the farmer will get paid 40% of what is being sold to the consumer. But in India, the cooperatives will be at 75%, and we should be at closer to the 68-70%. The 3-4% being the difference of modern trade coming in and taking their share. But we have one of the far most effective, cost-effective distribution channels. If you notice the milk, the guy who comes and delivers milk to the house, we have the first, not Dodla as such, but the milk industry has been the first to be home delivery. I mean, before any of the modern day things came, milk was delivered home from time immemorial. Maybe we were slow to make it become digitized on a cell phone, but it was there, and it was very cost effective because most of the milk industry is a dual role. My milk distributor will have two jobs. My village level agent who's procuring milk for me will also be doing his agriculture. So I normally give credit saying the guys in the milk industry, I'm talking of the back end and the front end, are very hardworking individuals. True. If you take our logistics guy, they will also do two things. I mean, if they deliver milk or if they're buying milk from the farm, they finish it and then they go back to their respective place and do another round. So this is because a lot of the effort put in by everybody, right from the farmer to the whole industry as such, is where the profit and the margins come in. Into your view of value added, I mean, I keep telling people, look at your own household, what you're eating. So earlier, if you're eating cheese was never there, or if you're looking at paneer. Now, south of India, paneer was a rarity. Now, I think at least it pops up once in 10 days or whatever it's coming into the house.
True.
And curd, which was there, maybe only the rich used to eat curd in the village, only buttermilk used to be given to everybody moving to curd. Will we replace your aerated drinks with more of lassi and buttermilk, which in my view I can call them probiotic, because what goes into your gut is better for you and healthier for you. So I think there's going to be a lot of sequential changes that you will see as the country moves forward, people's food habits change, and we'll have to be changing with times to keep up with it.
So when you look at India as a country, the kind of volume game that we are playing right now, and you rightly said, milk was one of the first products, I think, apart from newspaper, boys delivering and the milk delivery, that happens in sequence actually. But when you look at India as a market today, from where we progressed when we started that entire cooperative revolution to where we are right now, has the per capita milk consumption grown, and is there a possibility that it could grow even further?
It has grown tremendously. Now we are no longer in the list of the malnourished or whatever. In fact, including our population sizes and being so diverse in nature, it is almost on par with global consumption. And that too without much of the fancier products coming into consumption, like ice creams or that. So the Western consumption will be high, not only from the milk, but also from the ice cream or the cheeses that they eat. For us, the basic products of milk, curd and stuff like that itself have come there because of the affordability. Now it will start to change as you get more and more affordability. People will move for the higher ends. For example, if you take ice cream, in a village, if there was a wedding, was only when there would be ice cream available. Thanks to power now be available in all the villages, and especially most of the southern states where we operate, that power is no longer a problem of scarcity, but available throughout the year. Now freezers have come in. So my own village in Mahmudapuram, I have 3 competitive brands of milk along with being sold, and at a price point of 10 rupees or 15 rupees a pop of ice cream. I mean, I can get you a choco bar at 10 rupees. Yes, the size might be 90 ml or 100 ml. But when will the country now shift to eating ice cream? Now it's a summer game. Will it become throughout the year? Will habits change? Like buttermilk or curd. Normally in winter people will say, I'll get a cold and won't eat curd. Towards saying, no, I'll eat curd throughout. So a lot of things are driving it, right? The convenience, the habits are changing, people are getting affordability. And I think as it grows, it will do better because A, it's a healthier alternative. It's not anything harmful and people would go for it.
So when you look at India as a market, now you spoke about your business plan in India and the way you're growing, and I'm sure you don't rest on your laurels, you keep growing from there. But you mentioned about Africa right at the start, and I'm very inquisitive how you reached there.
So one of the private equity group that we had with us those days, it was called Black River and Proterra now. They were the ones who had come in with the view of saying, is there a possibility of large-scale dairy farming in the back end of India? And with that in view is when we had gone with them, and then we had taken it, and then we had gone and seen farms in China and elsewhere. And they were the ones who had also got an opportunity to go into Africa, and the profitability in Africa was huge because there was a lot of issues there in terms of lack of cold chain. Whatever the issues we went through, I think what Mr. Kurian had done and created the issues of the early 70s to the late 90s of what India went through is what Africa was going through. So we were ideally situated. So when they said profitability, there must be something wrong. Why don't you come and have a look with us? Is the reason we went there first and had a look at it. And lo and behold, it was that because of the whole problem of the chain and knowledge. So we have the unique advantage of the knowledge that we possess today as India in terms of dairy. It's not only with Africa, but even if you compare with the rest of the Western world, we have one of the best world-class processing abilities, thanks to the tech, IT boom that is coming. So automating of our plants can be done at a far cheaper cost than what it will cost in the West. Being product specific, because in India when we all started, we were used to doing multiple products of small scale and putting together a host of things, unlike doing only one mass production that we do. And also, we have a big advantage that the Indian dairy industry is still very virgin in the sense of we do not play with the products. And from a consumer point of view, for example, if I take curd, we only add like how you add culture or chemery as it's called in Telugu is what we also add into. We don't have any other additives. Whereas you go flip anything else in the Western world, there would be starch in it, there would be fungicides in it and all that because they want to look at a shelf life extension. Yes, it is by law. What is by law they do, they're not going against the law. But what is allowed because of modern marketing. In India, thanks to the daily consumption, daily delivery and the turn rates, we don't do much of that. So there is nothing that the dairy industry does as additions. So that has been our bigger boon. When we take that same knowledge and when we go elsewhere into countries like Africa and are able to do the same, we are able to get a little bit of traction in the market because we are doing a more palatable product for the consumer.
Has the African market also changed after, say, a few years? I mean, now since...
So I guess I don't know much of Africa as a large continent, but if we take the Eastern Africa, out of the two countries where we are between Uganda and Kenya, yes, we are doing well in Uganda. I think we would have a significantly large share there, 30-40% of market share there. Kenya is also there, but we're not big in Kenya yet. We just got a new plant going in there. And there also we should be. And that's what it is. It's basically end of the day, you give a good product, give it at a price which is not over the top and keep doing it regularly and consistently. Consumers do come and you tend to grow.
So the rest of Africa is also on your radar?
Slow and steady, sir. Africa is a huge continent and also we have to be very careful where we go because of the country risks, the currency risks that are there.
The regime stability, that's more.
And also currency risks. So some countries might do well there as a local currency, but when the money has to move around, it's very difficult.
And you still sell it at the Dodla brand there also?
Quasi-Dodla brands. Yes, we do add Dodla brand too because when we had acquired a unit in Uganda, it was called Dairy Top and that's how we were doing. But we also introduced Dodla along the way and see if it works.
Now, when you look at usually business people, industrialists, once they have kind of stabilized in one, they try and jump into an unrelated industry. Has that ever crossed your mind that, look, I'm doing this, maybe I should try something else, make steel or run a media house or do something of that sort? Have you ever thought of that?
Between core competence and diversification is always a constant thing, sir. But I think diversification we all do try at some point of time, like I said, saying whether it is an integrated thing of doing back end of farming or now we are into cattle feed, which it gives in is one part of looking at it as a back end or a front end. But to move into other areas of business, yes, it does get tempting sometimes. But luckily for me, from the day, I think almost from 98, 99, I've always had a venture capitalist / PE / now publicly listed company. When you have a good, strong governance system in place, a lot of questions do come up saying why. Why is it that you're doing it and all that? So that sorts of tapers you. So as an entrepreneur, you're always jumpy. You want to do 10 things at a time. But like I said, my team, which is there, the colleagues in the dairy, they're always saying, why are you doing this for? Why is it being done for? I think the greed is then brought under sort of control. The diversification without unrelated activity, when you have a strong group of people who are able to question you and you don't take it in a bad sense, that keeps it under control.
So still don't want to start selling mushrooms again?
So I would do it, but I would rather try to do it if there is somebody else running it. Okay. I would rather come and say, can I be a part of it? Now understand what your strengths and weaknesses are. That you're not a magician, you're not like the way my dad used to laugh and put it to me, if he says you're such a genius, build one more company. Still not been able to do it.
So when you look at your business as an entirety, 24 plus 2, 26 to 28 years now you're in this industry, you're a publicly limited. That means there's a lot of pressure on your bottom line and top lines, obviously. When you want to grow as a businessman, when you see a lot of entrepreneurs today, they get into valuation running into billions at the start. They don't have a physical plan to anything. It's just an idea whose time has come. So what is your advice tomorrow? I mean, today you have so many brands here. You have possibly a dozen big brands in milk industry itself, including the cooperatives in each state. When you advise youngsters who say, okay, I also want to get into something like this or some other business, having done this, seen this, dusted it all over a period of 20, 25 years, what would be your advice to today's young generation?
To be very clear of what you are as a part of it, because I have it in my head, it's only two ways. Right? There is one, what do you want to look at it from a company front and what do you want to look at it from a personal front. If you are able to keep your personal front under control and satisfy your requirements as what you want in the personal front, and then think of the company as something which is a legacy, right? So the way I look at it is don't think of the company as you as an individual, but the company is a part of multiple people. It's not one person who builds it up. And that ability to transfer that as you grow in size and scale, and to be able to get that into motion of it can work on its own is a challenge in terms of, if you notice, most of the companies don't last more than the first generation.
That's true.
By the time you do a transfer to the second, it's not only from the promoter's side or the entrepreneur's side, but also as a team that builds it. So India is now growing. It was not like the earlier days. It used to be proprietor concerned, father and son used to be there, or it was even worse saying father and eldest son used to be the one who would take into the business. And I have two daughters, and the daughters were not considered. From that kind of a scenario, now to be able to go and say we build a group of people, we build a team, human resources do become challenging. I think India, we will have to learn that, right? Otherwise, what happens is, if we are now in the cusp of, let's say, the earlier way of running business was hierarchical in nature, to being more meritorious in nature than being hierarchical. And the case in point is, if I have a child and I have a good professional, to make a call on who's more meritorious should get the role is going to be the challenge.
When Mr. Sunil Reddy looks back at his life and says, if given a chance again, starting from MIT onwards, I would do it differently. Would you have done it?
Not much, sir, but a slight more difference. Didn't understand the value of non-tangible assets like maybe a brand. Well, so I was of the old school of a physical asset is mostly as important, and that's a major importance. Like you were saying, the modern day boys who are doing this online tech and all that coming in. I think it has to be a blend of both. It cannot be either or. A front end, like say if I take a dairy who learns a lot more of how to build a brand in the front end, do a delivery, cannot do it well without a back end. And too much of back end without the front end of brand and delivery also is not there. So to learn how to create something which is more long lasting, maybe now the 30 years I'm getting closer. If I had this knowledge, maybe it would have been bought down by a decade.
But as they say, hindsight is an advanced science. People become wiser after they've gone past the road. Wonderful speaking to you, Sunil Reddy. And I'm sure one question I always had the back of my mind is, how do you handle competition? Because that is something even today's youngsters have not learned it, because you're operating in a cooperative sector where the person who's supplying milk to you can switch loyalties overnight, maybe on a price point, maybe on something else that is there. But when you look at the end of the day, it's a game where, as you said, loyalty builds over a period of time. Do you believe that the good old loyalty still holds good in India?
It's not, I wouldn't call it loyalty, sir. I would also call it the ability of you being transparent, honest to what you're doing, and not trying to be the only guy in the game making money. I think end of the day, nobody is stupid enough, right? So the ability to learn across the chain, who's right from the customer who has to pay for you, to the farmer who does the job of producing, for you to have the view of the transparency. So the biggest challenge is who should make what? What price should the customer be getting at? What should be the price that the farmer is viable at? So earlier day, it was easy when there was a leader and you were a follower. It was much more easier that you follow the leader. It becomes more complicated when you start consolidating and you become the leader and you have to decide. I think to be fair in your mind, not to say that I am the only one who has to maximize whatever I get, but be able to give that to everybody. So for example, when my investors ask, how do you decide on profitability? I keep saying we have to have a cutoff. I just can't go saying just because there's a shortage, I'll kill the customer, or there is a surplus, or I'll kill the farmer. And to become aware of that and be genuine to that is where the challenge is, whether it's a cooperative, whether it's a private sector, or any industry, to make sure all the stakeholders are happy. It's not one stakeholder alone is happy.
Wonderful speaking to you. And I'm sure that, as you keep growing and as you see price points, as you see pushbacks in terms of the consumer behavior, consumer buying patterns, I'm sure Dodla Dairy has gone places. Thank you very much, Mr. Sunil Reddy, for speaking to us and at HYBIZTV. Ladies and gentlemen, that was Mr. Sunil Reddy of Dodla Dairy, speaking about his 3 decades of journey in business and how he has evolved the brand to what it is today. Milk is milk at the end of the day, but then there is a lot behind it and a lot in front of it. Thank you for watching. Jai Hind.